Good evening. Welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Jefferson County Board of Education on Monday, September 12th. If you'd please join us for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening. Before we start our meeting tonight, I would like to just recognize and take a moment of silence for a student that Jefferson County Schools lost this week, Logan Kenny. So if you'd please join me for just a moment. Thank you. It always seems hard when we lose one of our own, but just a little extra hard when it's a student. So thank you for that. This evening, we will start out with West Virginia School Service Personnel Day proclamation. Good evening, Dr. Gibson-Learn.
Good evening, Ms. Skinner, members of the board. Annually, our governor has seen fit to name a day in honor of service personnel, public school service personnel. And as we have often stated, and which I think quite frankly, the board has backed up with action, we honor our service personnel here in Jefferson County Schools. We have a number of ways in which we both honor service personnel and not just honor lip service once a year, but ensure that service personnel are a core part of everything that we do as an organization and that they share equally in the benefits of the organization. So everything from the development of a service senate, we're still the only school system in the state that has a service senate, to giving funding to all of our service personnel to be able to compensate them for the things that they do for their kids, to developing the micro-credential program, which you'll hear a little bit next. They are an integral piece of everything that we do here in Jefferson and a part of our success. So at this time, I'd like to call up Mr. Larry Padgett, who is the local co-president of our WVSSPA organization, and he can say a few words about service personnel here in Jefferson.
Well, thank you guys for having us here tonight. As it's stated in the proclamation, that service personnel has a role in every aspect of education. And of course, whether that would be bringing them to school, cooking their meals, making sure that they're in a clean building, and even that the building is well maintained, and of course every other aspect there as well. And I'm glad to stand here and accept the proclamation on behalf of all those hardworking men and women. I don't know what much more I could say other than we know that we all work hard and we work together well in this county. I know that. Thank you.
Well, there's not much more we can say other than thank you very much, because, you know, as you mentioned, you guys are the guys that get the kids to school and keep them fed and get them home from school, which I'm sure everybody in the building appreciates. But thank you. It is appreciated and you guys are seen, so thank you. All right, next up we have the micro-credentialing presentation.
So Mr. Johnson will be placing a presentation up on the screen. All of you have a printed copy of the presentation in front of you as well. And we have a number of individuals who will be here presenting as part of this process. So we will lead off with Ms. Tanya Dallas Lewis.
Hello, good evening. So super, super, super excited about the micro credential program. And as we celebrate what is really a unique opportunity for us to recognize staff for their desire to continue in their learning, we want to talk to you a little bit about what micro credentials are and just the program in general. You ready? All right. So you'll see on the first slide there, well, the second slide, that a micro credential is almost exactly what it sounds like. Micro, meaning focused learning, a single learning experience, usually one single competency. And then that credential, all right, this is evidence-based, something that you master, and then we recognize you for it. What I love about it is it's a great opportunity for staff to be recognized, right? The ones that have been here, tried and true, many, many years invested into this district with their heart and soul. Well, now they can be recognized for their desire to continue to improve in their learning. And it puts them in the driver's seat of their learning. What do I mean by that? Well, specifically, it gives them the opportunity to personalize their learning. A micro-credential is an opportunity to align your learning with not only your own personal goals and your time, but also with student needs. And then these micro-credentials also align with our district priorities.
So one of the things that I think is important about this, we both wanted this to be meaningful for our staff here, but we also wanted it to be meaningful for them personally. One of the things that you'll notice when we talk about the Digital Promise micro-credentials is that these are portable. Once you earn a micro-credential, they have an electronic credential online that you can verify anywhere, sort of like having a college credit. You can go anywhere. Parents can see those, you can see those, you can use those in other areas and other positions in your life. So if you could go to the next slide. So some of what Ms. Dallas Lewis was talking about with these are that when we say competency-based, so many times when we have staff who are taking courses and doing coursework, sometimes there's a lot of theory, there's a lot of philosophy in those, and not always as much meat on the bones about how does this apply to what I'm doing. I need some practical tools that I can turn around and use in my work tomorrow. And one of the wonderful things about micro-credentials is that they are exactly that. They are developed to be very personalized. They are developed to be useful in very real world application with those. If you could go to the next slide. One of the things that when we talk about the components of the micro-credentials for the micro-credentials was number one, when we talk about competencies, we talked about having very targeted areas. You're going to hear in a little bit how we arrived at which competencies we chose for staff to put in these micro-credentials. Again, we try at every turn to do things with staff, not to staff. And so in this case, it was a very collaborative effort to find out what were the areas in which they wanted to grow. And then when we talk about key methods, one of the things that we talked about was in order for you to have growth, you have to have something that you can actually apply. You can actually do, not just theory, not just reading these grand ideas, but how do I turn around and put that in action in a classroom, in a cafeteria, on a bus? All of those were then research-based. They're vetted. There are resources if someone wants to expand their learning beyond that. There are articles, there are links to books, there are ways that you can both learn what you need in the immediacy of it and also explore it more deeply should you choose. And within those credentials, once someone's gone through that process, there is a criteria for us for assessment. for us to be able to see, did you learn this? Do you know this? Are you actually able to apply this in your work? And that's part of us going through and ensuring that parents and community members and staff members can be assured when you have that micro credential, you know what you're talking about in that area. You have the ability to apply those, and you've shown that. So.
Yes, and so pretty exciting. If you go to that next slide, what I also love about this is, again, meaningful. It's aligned. It's at your own pace. A lot of times when it comes to professional development, you're rewarded based on seat time, hours. Instead, with this is a learning by doing approach. The true measure of anything learned is if you can teach it to someone else. And so these micro credentials are entry points, entry level, not entry level, but entry access points for every staff member, whether you're a teacher, bus driver, aide, doesn't matter. We're really excited about this. And the best part that I didn't mention, of course, was that it's incentivized. It's financial incentives there, right? So not only are we recognizing our staff for their hard work, right? But we're also making sure that they get ensuring a great opportunity for a $3,000 a year pay increase. Okay, so that's pretty stinking exciting. The other way that it's exciting for me is that these are uniquely designed. I'm gonna say that again, uniquely designed for staff and in many ways by staff. And if we go to that next slide, oh, I'm gonna let her do this one.
So we've gotten a couple of questions. I've gotten a couple of questions from this board about timeline, about, hey, where are my classes, right? And one of the things that we've talked about when we've put this information out, sometimes you have to make decisions about whether you do things quickly or whether you do them well. And we felt like, in particular, in this instance, this is a $3.6 million investment from this board and people, right? So if we're going to put that kind of money into it, it needs to be done well. So what I did was gave you a very quick timeline of here are the things that had to go first. We basically met with several committees of different jobs units within the school system and ask them what would be meaningful to them. What did you want to see? What do you want to learn about? What would help you in your job? We took all of those, we collated them, the committee went through them, we finalized it into 6 content areas to start with. We then had to have a platform to house this, right? So we went out, we took bids from different companies. We again had another committee go through, look at all the digital platforms, see which ones they felt like worked best for staff, were the most intuitive they could use. They selected Digital Promise, which you'll see during the rollout. Then, rather than taking an off-the-shelf class from them because they had chosen the content, we paid our own people. Instead of sending money to some company or consultant out in Virginia or Maryland or Ohio, we brought our own people in who are the experts and said, these are the areas, you build this. And so we paid our own people, they did the research, they did the building, and we put all of that content together. We then had other members of the staff review that content and go through and do test runs of it to see what worked, what didn't. We had our own technology department have to do some organization of that content for easier delivery. We've been through a couple of iterations of it where we put it out, we tested the content, we went, oh, that's not very intuitive, or, oh, that doesn't work the way that we thought we did. We've gone back. So we've done some reconfiguration of that. One of the things that we did do, and you will see this later on tonight, we had in the original plan a set of assessor positions. These are basically folks who would have to go through and check all of them, right? So if I give you, you read about 5 ways to maintain your emotional equilibrium, right? And the program says, you know, pick 2 of these and tell me where you'll use them, right? If you go in that box and you just write yes, then someone has to go in that box and check and make sure that you wrote 2 of them where you're going to use them. But what we found was that as folks were going through the programs, They really wanted to have someone, number one, for the technology part, in case they had concerns. We have a number of staff who simply do not use computers every day in their jobs. And quite frankly, they're staff members who, as you heard with our service personnel, they could certainly use an extra $3,000. And we wanted to make sure that this program was accessible. So we had to build a lot of infrastructure around having someone on site at all of our work locations who both was trained in this program, could help support the staff for access, and could give them feedback about content. So putting that in place with the assessors. Also, technology is set up, and thank you, Jason Johnson and others. They also are doing a live once a month, come in, sit down, and you can sit down with us in the staff dev room with a laptop in front of you, and we'll just walk you through it, right? To the extent that you need. So we've invested a lot of human capital in making this accessible for everybody, because we felt like when we got our marching orders from the board, that was what you valued. You wanted to make sure that this was accessible for every staff person that we had, and that we invested in the infrastructure for everybody to be able to use it. So could you go to the next slide? Thank you.
I have a question. Did you ask questions? Thought you said-
Oh, no, I think she said next slide.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay. That's okay. So and your question, we also have some people who were doing the development. So we'll go all the way to the end of that. May I answer your question. If not, certainly we'll take questions, ma'am.
So speaking of collaboration, this was a heavy lift. And so even at central office with our technology department, human resources, staff development, well, that also stretched on over to our staff. And so we had stakeholder committees that was comprised of both service and professional. And we made sure that we included them every step of the way, their input and their expertise. And so really excited today because I have two members of those stakeholder committees with us. And so as you can see, the two rollout micro credentials that we'll be starting with effective September 27th will be Understanding Trauma and the Brain and Finding Balance Introduction. So I want to introduce one of the two. Her name is Ms. Siri McDonald. She's going to talk to you about her experience not only as a reviewer and a stakeholder committee member, but this is also one of the writers. And she's specifically going to focus on understanding trauma in the brain. Immediately after her, I will be introducing you to Ms. Lou Poole, who is our service personnel person, who also served and gave a lot of time and input on the behalf of service personnel in the area of being a reviewer and also serving on those stakeholder committees.
It's a pleasure to be here with you. Thank you so much for having me. And my name is Siri McDonald. I'm a school counselor at Driftwood Elementary School. I was asked to participate in the initial planning piece, and then that kind of evolved to writing. Exciting and daunting as it was. I can say I can mostly just speak for myself, but it was definitely a pleasure the whole way through, working with both Ms. Tanya Dallas Lewis and all the other collaborators. Some of those included principals, support staff, teachers, special educators, and service personnel. So really kind of to echo what's already been said, is that our big focus was on streamlining, like making this easily, quickly accessible and easily accomplished, but also very relevant. And so we looked at a lot of different topics initially to filter through what seemed to be relevant and what challenges we deal with on the ground in the schools. And mostly professional staff, I would say all of us actually, we're looking at with Digital Promise, how we thought that, sorry, just checking my notes here, how we thought that we could be helpful and provide opportunities for growth professionally, no matter what stage or what position people had. Personally, I worked most on understanding trauma in the brain, and it was very rewarding. I definitely feel like it was a deep dive into things that I've been working on professionally for a while, and in grad school and beyond, but I learned so much, and I worked with several other staff on it, and I'm excited to hear what other, what participants and people who do the micro credentials, what they have to, feedback they have for us. So, thanks. Yeah.
Hi, thank you for letting me be here. All right, I'm Lou Poole. I'm not used to this, I'm sorry.
You're okay. You're doing great.
Okay, so this is my 24th year in the county. I'm an ECAT. I actually taught Dr. Kennedy's daughter many years ago. Early childhood development specialist, yes. Yay. So I worked on the committee and it was pretty awesome because we did a lot of work. Everyone did. It was, I mean, we all worked together. We had questions, we had concerns. We all worked together to figure out what was the solution to all this. And my biggest thing is that it was where service personnel was involved in this, which was great. Because sometimes we are somewhat neglected, but here lately, past 4 or 5 years maybe, we are like being a part of the team again, which is great, you know, so, but this committee, we did an awesome job, I think. Like I said, we worked together, we did it very well, and there was no complaining. So, thank you, sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, on to the next slide. So I think in terms of, and thank you both for coming here. I know you've already had a long day of work already. It means a lot that you come and spend the time so that the board understands all the time and effort that got put into this. So I think if you've seen and heard a resounding theme, it's that we need to listen to our staff and we need to invest in our staff. And I think that this program is a really, really good one. It will have its bumps. Certainly, let's not pretend that it won't, but it is also something we're doing. And I thank the board for this. No one else in the state of West Virginia is doing this. So sometimes it's hard to be the first one and to get out in front of things. But I also think that it speaks to where this board puts their priorities. So thank you. And with that, I think that any of the 4 of us will be happy to take any questions that you have.
Before we start with questions, Mrs. Poole, not to make you feel old, but you mentioned teaching my daughter in kindergarten. She left for college last month. So
You must have done a great job, Miss Poole. She got into college, didn't she? A good foundation, a good foundation.
beautiful foundation. Yes, thank you.
I have a couple questions. When do you expect these, credentialing to be available to all staff?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. That's a good question. September the 27th, we released last week an overview, an FAQ to our staff. We asked them to give us any feedback on anything that was unclear. Mr. Fogel has done a video that we'll be releasing to all of the staff, showing them how to log on to the program. Again, part of this is tonight, you will be, I hope, approving in the consent agenda those assessor positions. We will post those, hire those, train those. We want them in the building in place when we actually release it, because we think one of the worst things that we could do is spend all this time and effort. And then I go to get in and do it and it doesn't work. I don't understand it. I'm getting frustrated. And so I put in a help ticket to technology along with 460 other people who are trying to get in at the same time. Whereas if I have somebody in my building, then I go down the hall and I say, hey, Lou, I know that you worked on this. Can you please help me with this? Sure. Yeah. You just have to put in these credentials. You'll be fine.
So all, is it 6 that they can take for a year?
I'm sorry,
Do you
ma'am.
expect all of them to be available? Or
Oh,
a
absolutely.
portion?
Oh, only 2 are going to be available on the 27th. We're
Okay.
pacing those out as folks learn them and as we get feedback on what was good and not good about the ones that we've released already. For instance, if we have one type of assessment in there that the reviewers thought would work really well, and we get feedback from the staff that they hate it, then we won't build that assessment into the next one. We have the capacity to edit them and change them.
So you don't have any idea when they'll all be ready or how
No,
frequently or?
again, that's a good question. And as it says on our website that we sent out, we will be releasing 2 micro credentials each 9-week period. So after the release of these, we expect in the next 9 weeks. Now, again, if anything were to happen, but right now we're on track to do that.
The other question, you were talking about someone available to, or hiring someone to evaluate. I'm just curious, are you expecting to fill these with teachers and service personnel or?
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am. The theme of all of this is that we're paying our own staff. So in every building, it will be a stipended position. So that person both helps the individuals in their building in terms of logging on, in terms of navigating the program. Once people complete the credentials, and one of the marvelous things that technology did on the back end of this is the assessments in the credential is anonymous to the assessor. It basically assigns a number. Let's say that Mr. Osborne is the assessor in that building. He won't necessarily get completed ones from anyone in his building. He will get a certain number. They'll be evenly divided among all the assessors. He might be the person at CW Shipley, but he might get someone's from Harper's Ferry or Blue Ridge or anywhere else, and he won't know who they are. So he's just going to do the assessment and the feedback, which the employee will get the feedback in writing. And he sends it back and he doesn't know who it is. So it's not a personal, oh, I like you, I don't like you. We train them all the same. And then they anonymously go through those credentials.
That's all. Thank you.
You're welcome, ma'am.
Thank you very much to you and the staff for putting the time and effort into this, because it is important and you did it the right way, you know, having our own people model it and create it and hopefully now use it. So thank you.
Oh, no, thank you to the staff.
I
Yes,
just-
ma'am.
I'm sorry, I just want to ask a question because I want to make sure that I understand. So the assessors will be employees that we already have, right?
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely.
So, like you said, there may be 400 and some odd, I guess that's how many complaints or questions, not complaints, but questions may come through, right?
I use that number. Thank you for giving me a chance to clarify. We have 1,280 plus employees. They all have that opportunity. If all 1,200 of them, what we expect will happen is in the beginning, boom, we will have hundreds of people like day one, click, 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 because they want to get through it because they want to get paid.
Right.
So we didn't think that having all that crush of hundreds of people going just to technology, they would get so backlogged. That's why we want to have one person in each building who's been trained to support them.
Right, so I understand, thank you. And so I just wanted to make sure that the personnel that we have, they don't get overbogged because they have their job that they're doing now. And then you have all these requests coming in, so.
Yes, ma'am. That's why it would be a stipend. They would be doing it outside of their regular workday. It's basically an extra job that they're getting paid to do.
Okay,
They get a stipend for that.
that's great.
Yes, ma'am. And again, voluntary, they can choose to do it or not. We expect
Right.
that we will have many interested people.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
You're welcome, ma'am.
I didn't really see a job description. I'm just curious, the stipend, like approximately how much and how is it
I
paid?
believe that stipend is 2,000. Is that it? Yes, the stipend is 2,000. And correct me if I'm wrong, Miss Lauren, there's a job description for that. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
On the docs in the agenda, I didn't see it, but. Oh, okay, thank you. And that's just coming out of the regular.
That's coming out of the $3.6 million that we put aside specifically for micro-credentialing. When we first developed it, we thought, okay, if all of these employees take advantage, we know we need assessors, we know we need to pay for the program. Again, we'll continue to monitor that and make sure that it's sufficient. We believe that it will be.
Sounds like a great program. It really does.
Thank you, ma'am. I full kudos. I can't begin to tell you, these ladies right here and technology and our staff, you know, if we had enough time and support for them, I swear they could do anything. They really, really could. It's impressive. I know sometimes I brag too much on Jefferson, but man, when we turn our people loose, we're pretty darn good, man. We really are. Not that we don't make mistakes or, you know, do things poorly, but man, when you turn them loose, they're really good. I'm looking forward to being able to see them. So
Thank you.
thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Next, we have the Deputy Superintendent for Instructional Support update. Mr. Banks. That was your
What an
fault.
introduction.
I hope that was a touchdown or something.
Good
evening, everyone. Going to update you on a couple things this evening. Number one, give you some data and some information related to our summer experience. With me tonight is Mr. Alex White, who oversees the JCS summer experience and all that goes with it, including all the planning, and is very involved in hiring and begging sometimes. So he's going to start off by sharing and give you an update on our summer experience. So I'll turn it over to Mr. White.
I got the same welcome. It pumps me up. I'm like, again, my name is Alexander White, and I work in the Office of Social and Emotional Support. And one of my chief responsibilities from about March until August is to oversee, implement, and all things related to the summer experience. Thank you for allowing me this space to come tonight to share some good news about it, because it was very well received from our community. We had a tremendous amount of positive feedback from the students who attended and their families, as well as the staff members who helped us make it happen. So just an overview before we get into the numbers, but it was a 5-week program for all students in kindergarten through 12th grade, and it began June 13th and ran through July 22nd. We offered in-person experiences for all grade levels, and secondary students, that's middle school and high school, were offered a virtual option if they chose it. Community partners included Alpha Best Education and Jefferson County Parks and Recreation. So our total student enrollment was 1,022 pupils, spanning 5 participating sites. The elementary sites were Blue Ridge, North Jefferson, Page Jackson, and Shepherdstown Elementary. And between those, we had 675 elementary students, kindergarten through 5th grade. It's also important to note that, again, we partnered with Alpha Best Education, and there were 166 students who took advantage of wraparound care, which means they were provided either before school care or after school care, or in a lot of cases, both, for working families. And the grade that had the highest, the elementary grade that had the highest level of participation was kindergarten, with 128 participants this summer. At the elementary level, there were, each week had its own theme. So we had a sports week, we had West Virginia week, a patriotic week, camping, and winter in July. A lot of fun. Now, the secondary experience, a lot of times when you think about the summer experience for secondary students, you think staying on track to graduate, credit recovery, course recovery, things of that nature. So our secondary site was Jefferson High School, and that was for all students, middle school and high school, all in one location. We provided transportation for each student every day for those that requested it, and that was across all grade levels. Our high school Apex credit recovery had 94 students enrolled in it, and the pass rate was 93.6%. It was a tremendously successful program. It's important to note that if a student had signed up to take an Apex program, they were on campus in a classroom, computer lab of sort, with a teacher that was there to help them and lend support. It's a self-guided program and it's also self-paced. So when a student finishes, they're able to be completed for the summer. We also had an in-person credit recovery option for high school students. To clarify, that means we were running in-person classes for math and for English, the two core subjects that we felt was very important to provide in-person face-to-face instruction as opposed to a self-guided course online. That particular program had 86 students take advantage of it, and the passing rate there was 93%, pretty impressive. New this year was the virtual component. We used Edgenuity, our online virtual platform, which is the same one we use for the JVA. We had 199 students enroll into that program, and that includes middle school and high school students. Our passing rate there was 83.4%. So by most standards, still doing pretty well there. And then finally, our middle school in-person instruction. So we had grades 6, 7, and 8 who came into Jefferson High School to meet with their teacher each and every day to be there for in-person instruction. 66 middle school students took advantage of that program offering, and that pass rate was 100%. In that program, the three main courses offered were math, English language arts, and science. The final 4 pieces of information I'll share, just as some bonus data, is this. The program was 25 full days long. It was important to us when creating the program that it was a full day, particularly because working family and perhaps some, especially for our younger learners and childcare need, come and participate and stay on track to graduate on time. Thank you. This time I could entertain any questions you might have about the 2022 summer experience.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
They got credit for these classes that they passed, like the secondary level?
Yeah, so thank you. At the high school level, students are earning credit towards graduation. And if they failed a course during the school year and received an F on their report card transcript, they could sign up to recover that credit. And they could do that 3 ways: through Apex, which is computer-based and on campus, through in-person instruction on campus, or through Edgenuity, which is our virtual model. If they successfully completed the course, then they received the credit. The grade did not replace their course failure. It was in addition to the course failure, which did not go away.
So if you failed Math 1, you went to summer school for 5 weeks and you failed Math 1 again, or you passed it. You're saying they still had a fail on their record for Math 1?
What I'm saying is the original time that they took it in person at school during the semester of the school year, that failure doesn't disappear and get replaced by the summer grade. It stays there. And then if they pass it in the summer, then that grade also appears in the transcript.
So they can't retake is there any opportunity to retake a class that's failed?
Each class that they took in the summer school was the opportunity to retake it.
But the failure from the first time they took it stays on the report card. It doesn't replace,
Right,
correct?
right, correct.
Is there ever an opportunity to replace a failing grade?
In my experience in doing this, no. The summer experience is meant to recover the credit so that they get that credit added to their 22 total number of credits for minimum graduation requirements.
Okay, thank you.
So I would like to speak on the fact that I was a parent who sent my child to Jefferson High School. However, my child is a A/B student. So once he got there, the program was not for everyone.
Mhm.
That program was for students who were recovering. So not only myself, but other parents did not realize this because it was offered for everyone.
Mm.
And so then in speaking with the principal, we found out that our children did not belong there because it was for children who are recovering, basically.
Mhm.
And they had no recovery or no program for the children who didn't need that. So we had to remove our children from the program because it wasn't going to be of any help to have them there. And I'm not going to say they would have been a disturbance, but I'm just saying they would have been there not having anything to do. And then you have the other children who needed to be there, who are trying to work because our children had already done this, had already passed it. And so there was nothing for those children.
Thank you for that feedback. I really appreciate it. It helps us develop the program in the future. Certainly
Sure.
enrichment components are of also high priority for us.
Thank you.
And I believe the virtual piece of it could be geared towards that. I mean, the in-person was credit recovery specifically. But my question quickly is, it was 404 courses recovered.
Right.
Each course, is that a semester-long course?
Yes, which is also equal to 1/2 credit.
Right. So if somebody had to take, let's say they failed math in the fall and the spring, they actually took 2 recovery credits and got the fall one and the spring one, correct?
Correct. It's also important to note that the program is designed for students to recover 1 course equal to 1/2 credit. It's only a 5-week program, and the courses are pretty rigorous. And I can say that now with even more emphatically now that I have students who are in JVA taking Edgenuity courses. I can verify that. But some students that work at a quicker pace, certainly, yes, can finish 1 course and maybe in 2.5 weeks, and then with permission, sign up for a 2nd course and take that one, earning a full credit during the 5-week span of the summer experience.
Thank you.
Welcome.
I just real quick, number one, would ask one question, say another, but how is that going to work for the Promise Scholarship? Because I'm thinking, and as a state as a whole, going off after what Dr. Joy had spoken about, if you have that F on your transcript and it's one of your 4 content areas and you get that F, obviously it's very hard to bring that up because you have to have a 3.0 in 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade for math, science, social studies, and English. So if you get the F and then you're able to get the credit, I get that you've retrieved the credit, but if you can't replace the F, that's going to absolutely maybe demolish you for the opportunity to get that Promise Scholarship if that's what you desire. And not all kids are going to desire, but I would ask that we maybe look into that as a state as a whole. Is that a state policy? Is it a Jefferson County policy? And if it is a state policy, how can we work to maybe push back on that to see if I've spent the time in the summer and I've recovered that credit and I feel like I know that content because I have passed those exams. I think even if they only allowed me to get as high as a C or even as high as a D, I don't know, whatever it is, even the retest policy we have allows that. So if we don't allow that for a change in grade on a transcript, I don't know that that's fair to a person who's put in all that work to get just the recovery. I mean, just the recovery. They need it to graduate, but do you see what I'm saying? So I think,
Yes, of course.
I think just
And-
going forward, we need to look at that to
Yeah.
see if it's a
I
possibility.
think it's a valuable comment for sure. And to my limited knowledge of this, I don't know that it's a county policy or if it's a state policy. I'm happy to investigate that to see. I can share with you that since I've been doing the work, I kind of inherited that law of the land. So happy to look into it further. And I tend to agree with you. The hope is that for every course failure during the school year, that they will offset it with a passing grade in the credit recovery model, whether it be during the summer or in our afternoon 3 to 5 program. But what I can say is this: since I've been doing the work, 2013 is when I began implementing summer experience, and prior to that, the summer school program. Our pass rates have been tremendous, and many students don't just squeak by in the summertime with a D or a C. We've got a lot of students who are able to offset that course failure with A's and B's.
Yeah.
So to your point, it does help offset the grade, but yeah, happy to look into it further.
Yeah, and I think it's also an opportunity to look at and have staff talk through, and where if a child did even get a D and they know that it's going to inhibit them from Promise, do they have the opportunity to spend that time in the summer? If you want to bring that grade up, you're allowed to do that, but you've got to put the time in then.
Right.
And you have to complete that course again. but you do have the opportunity to raise that. I don't know, those are all questions. I think they should go through faculty senate and have some parent involvement in that to try to discuss that for people that's affected, but
Excellent.
I think it'd be a good point. And then I just want to commend whoever those teachers were for middle school that have 100% pass rate for 66 students. I mean, that's not easy. And, the other pass rates are amazing as well. And everyone did a great job, but whoever those middle school teachers are, obviously saw fit to make sure that every single one of those students was successful. So
They did. And if I could
Great.
use my platform to invoke the name of Mr. Sam Carpenter, who was the person that I hired to oversee and manage the middle school and high school portion of the program, I leaned on him quite a bit, even to hire the people who were in those positions, and he did an excellent job. So hats off to Mr. Carpenter.
great. Okay. Thank you.
Of course. Anything else?
Thank you, Mr. White.
Thank you.
One of the big differences this summer, as you know, a lot of this was new to us last summer. And Mr. White and HR were really able to get on things early and pick up the phone and call people and ask them to work the summer experience, including administrators, service personnel, and teachers. So we were able to get a staff and get them early and get them trained ahead of the summer experience. So that was a big difference. And I owe all that to Alex and HR and those administrators that were hired. Okay, so I want to also just briefly give you an update on JVA. That was a question that was asked from the board, and give you a little bit of an update on enrollment. On the handout I've given you, our current enrollment for JVA sits at 267. I'm sorry, 267, which includes 40 elementary students, 54 middle school students, and 173 high school students. The biggest discrepancy from last year to this year is that our elementary enrollment was at 122, and this year is at 40. And keep in mind, this was in the spring, in March, right around the time of COVID and the mask mandates discussion. The number that you see, 267, is actually up 74 students from the beginning of the school year. So what I'm really trying to tell you is that JVA enrollment is very unpredictable. The biggest factor that influences JVA enrollment was COVID, and in particular with many parents at the elementary level, the absence or presence of a mask mandate. And I tell you that because when our parents were calling in and enrolling and then moving back to in-person learning, those were the most important factors to them. And that was related to COVID for the younger elementary students. The next question that was asked was about asynchronous versus synchronous instruction and what is that breakdown? So students in K through 6, we added a 6th grade teacher this year for JVA. They receive live synchronous instruction. In grades 7 through 12, they're all part of the Edgenuity, which Mr. White referred to earlier, where they receive instruction from Edgenuity instructors asynchronously. So they're watching videos and learning through that means. All students in grades 7 through 12 have a virtual mentor that monitors their progress, communicates with them, has homeroom with students, and tutors in various subjects, as well as checks in with them every day. And I know that was something that was very important to the board. The last thing that was asked about was the number of JVA staff. We have 1 teacher per grade in grades K through 6. We have 4 mentors that were referred to earlier for grades 7 through 12 that also oversee the hybrid students that are in person, but also taking virtual classes. 2 special education teachers. Our special education enrollment is quite high in JVA for both elementary and secondary. 1 counselor and 1 administrator. So that's kind of an update for JVA. I do want to mention that, as you can see, our numbers are low in K through 3, and we have currently reassigned JVA teacher to a vacant position for which they're certified. And that's just due to an unanticipated drop in student enrollment. As you are well aware, the board needs to make decisions about RIFs and transfers back in March. And in March, as I was pointing out earlier, Our elementary enrollment was 122. So it's really hard to say in March that we could have been able to RIF or transfer a position based on our enrollment because it was very high. It was from that point throughout the summer and seeing what, COVID brings or doesn't bring, that our enrollment at elementary dipped from 122 to as it is 40 right now. So I'll turn it over to you if you have any questions about JVA. Yes, ma'am.
For some reason, I thought there was a director and assistant director that had been approved previously. Is that not the case?
There is a director of, Mr. Webb is the director of responsive education, and JVA is one of the responsibilities that he oversees in addition to many others.
Okay. Is there also an assistant director?
No, there's not. There's just the administrator who's essentially the principal of JVA.
Okay. The other question was, I had asked about the test scores of the virtual students. I
Right.
understand that they're mixed in with the regular.
Yes, we have disaggregated those and plan to bring those to you next week when we give you our presentation on data. We will pull out JVA separately so you can see how those students did.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Banks, I don't see any way as a system we can afford to have one teacher for K1, 2, and 3. If we could in the future go to maybe an ungraded approach or a K1, 2, 3 approach, at least initially till we find our student numbers, because I don't think we can afford to dedicate a teacher to that few children. And I understand your problem, that the RIF list and all that, but I think we need to look at that elementary section differently next year.
Okay, thank you.
Isn't it K through fifth? Is it one teacher that has all of those or no?
There is, each one of those grade levels has their own teacher, K
Oh.
through 6. Yes,
So you have first grade 3 students with
Yes.
one teacher?
yes. And back in the spring, that number was up around 20. So again, we're going to have to be able to predict it a little bit better. Obviously, COVID has a major impact on enrollment in JVA. But we will come up to, in the spring, we may have, our enrollment may be way up again. So we'll have to decide, do we go ahead and RIF or transfer a position, knowing what happened this year? Because we have a trend now, that it was high in the spring and now beginning the school, it was low. So we may want to go ahead and look at that in the spring, even if the enrollment is up.
And you can't look at that now?
I do think that one thing that may be helpful is that the superintendent has the authority up till the 20th day of instruction to transfer staff based on unpredicted changes in enrollment. And we have been having discussions with staff at JVA who we may need to help us out with making some changes in caseload in order for us to equitably distribute those. So, but those aren't personnel matters that we can discuss right here. I simply want to convey to you that we have that authority to make those movements up to the 20th day of instruction. And we've already had those conversations with staff.
Especially since we have a teacher shortage.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, so does that mean that a teacher may be moved over to another classroom someplace else to teach? Is that what that means?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Banks.
Thank you.
All right, next we have the approval of the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the regular board meeting held August 22nd, 2022, and the special meeting held September 6th, 2022?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Ogden. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Osborne. Any discussion? All in favor of approving the minutes from August 22nd, 2022 and September 6th, 2022, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Ms. Harner, did we have any citizens' comments this evening? Thank you. All right, the consent agenda. Ms. Loring, are there any adjustments to the consent agenda?
No, we do not.
No? Perfect. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So move.
Thank you, Mr. Osborne. Is there a second?
Second,
Thank you, Ms. Ogden. Any discussion?
just wanted to clarify one more time again that our, the request of positions being asked for are for stipends, not an actual position, a new position being hired.
The assessors is stipend, line 68, 69 for the pre-K positions, the teacher and the ECATs. Those are due to student enrollment. So we have to staff a whole classroom for North Jefferson. So that with the numbers and the student needs, that would require us to create a new preschool special needs teacher for that position, our classroom, and 2 ECATs.
Do you know what our numbers are right now? Did Mr. Wink say?
Was it 19 or 13, 19? 19, yeah. And you have to have an instructional leader and then 2 support aides in that classroom.
So we have, what we can have up to 19, and then since we're at 19, we have to split it. Is that how that works?
Yeah, you can have up to 19. So
Okay.
yeah, so that with your teacher, your professional and 2 service personnel support, then we've got our ratios covered.
Okay, so this will be for because we have 19 in case we go over, or because we actually already are, we know we're going to be over.
Oh, we know,
so-
we have the students.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, we're way beyond.
So then basically that would be a split, that would split those numbers and drop those numbers down. So we
No,
wouldn't have 19 in a class, correct?
I believe the plan is to have 19 in that class. Is that correct? The pre-K. Mhm.
So the class that we're asking for is a pre-K special needs classroom, which has a different limit than a universal. The universal classroom has a limit of 20, and this one would have a limit of 8 based on the needs of those students.
Okay, that makes me feel better. That's why I was like, can't put 19 children in there with needs. That's not fair. Okay, that makes more sense. Thank you.
I just want to clarify, there's several substitute teacher positions. Are those long-term sub, or do they convert to long-term sub after a certain date?
Which one is that the
The
attachment?
new personnel being recommended for already existing positions, 1 through 12.
No, those are brand new day-to-day substitute teachers. So they'll go on our day-to-day substitute in Sims. So whenever there's an absence, then those would be new approved day-to-day subs who could accept those calls.
But even though some of them are assigned a certain class that they're going to every day and they believe that they are given that position?
That I am not aware of. So that would have to, if somebody is listed here as a new substitute teacher and is assigned a long-term, I don't see
Number 10.
anybody. Oh, are we talking about the superintendent approvals or the personnel actions?
Superintendent
Okay,
sign off.
Sorry, let me go to that one. Yes, so what you should see, those, because they're brand new substitute teachers for us, we have to approve them as a substitute teacher. So that's one action. And then they're also assigned as a long-term substitute teacher.
At what point do they come back again on the
Mhm.
agenda?
Yep, you should see. You should see all of them. And if they're not listed on the attachment for the long-term subs that are assigned for this year, then they'll be extended on the next one. So we have an attachment of the assigned
Okay,
LTSP.
I was just wondering why they said sub and not long-term.
Yeah, because we've got to do the first action. Since they're newly engaging with us, we've got to do that
Okay.
first initial action of actually appointing them as a substitute teacher for us.
Okay, thank you.
So,
Any other questions?
sure. And looking at the transfers, it seems that everyone has a date except for Sam Carpenter. And I realized that he's an assistant principal,
Right.
but have we given him maybe a a date or?
Yeah, we actually
maybe
talked
date.
this afternoon. So one of the things that we needed to do is to make sure that we've got the right support personnel at both schools. So I'm waiting for that email.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, everyone in favor of the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Thank you, Ms. Laurie. All right, unfinished business, there is none. New business, request approval to bid central office bond security projects. Mrs. White.
This evening, as part of our ongoing bond projects, I do want to ask if we could go out to bid for a request for proposal for security improvements at the central office. So I will await your motion.
Is there a motion to request the approval for the central office bond security project?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Osborne. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Ogden. Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the bid for the central office bond security project, say aye. Oppose? Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I don't think you go anywhere yet, do you? That was the easy part. Now comes the fun part. Number B, action to approve Joyce White as interim treasurer.
Just one more hat, Miss White.
You didn't read the backside of the page tonight, did you?
Did.
Is there two Joyce Whites or?
You
So
would think so.
Essentially, in the interim, while we complete this search for chief financial officer, we are required on several of our checks to have 3 signatures, the board chair, the superintendent, and your treasurer. And so we have to name an interim treasurer, and we've been tag teaming, and actually Joyce and I and Amy have been holding a 2-hour, sometimes more, finance meeting every single week, working through, and we've had some kind help from some other treasurers and other school systems who are helping us maintain while we go through this search. But Joyce has certainly, once again, as she always does, taken one for the team, and we'll need to have the board vote on her as the interim treasurer while we conduct this search.
Interim treasurer isn't taking one for the team. That's got to be one of the most exciting positions in the school system.
So will you be doing both? Will she be doing both positions? Or, okay.
But
And
it's
is this
not,
extra pay as well? No.
it's,
And other duties as assigned by the superintendent of schools.
Okay.
and I mean,
Lee
you're,
knows that.
Lee, man of 1,000 departments.
I mean, we've still got a finance department running and chugging along, and we've got extra help from the outside. So you're not really doing the daily duties every day, Monday through Friday, of the treasurer. You're just the designated person as the interim treasurer until we can hire somebody to run that department.
Although I would
Signing-
point out that I didn't mean to interrupt you, Dr. Joy. I just would point out that our wonderful Teresa Fagans is on this agenda, and she does payroll and everything else, and has been there since the beginning of time, making sure that all that runs smoothly and everyone gets paid. And she's retiring in December, I see as well. So it's,
We actually have we're reaching a threshold, as often happens in departments. A group of people come in together and they sort of age out together. And our entire payroll department is, as of now, eligible for retirement. And so we've been meeting with them about some planning for some succession planning and coaching. And I would anticipate that we'll be bringing that back before the board, because that's an incredibly important function. People have to get paid. And for people who haven't worked in school finance in West Virginia, although, WEVAS 2.0 has had upgrades for the student sides of things, right? And that's been nightmare enough for data integration. They haven't upgraded the finance side of it. It is still green screen. It is still, MS-DOS, space, _ 0.25.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my
So
It's awful.
it's one of the things that we're struggling with is you can't even just go out and get a CPA who understands business, finance and accounting. They come in and they're like, holy cow, are you kidding me? And we have to go, nope, not kidding. Here's what we have to work with. So that's been but that's okay. We're in it to win it.
All right, so is there a motion to approve Joyce Weiss as interim treasurer? Thank you, Mr. Osborne. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Ogden. Any other questions or comments?
I want to be sure that we try to keep her responsibilities in that role to as much of a minimum as we possibly can. It's okay for her to get writer's cramp, but not heart attack.
Where have you heard that before, Ms. White? Agreed, sir. Agreed. But same thing all over. Teachers, principals, all of us
I
have
understand,
gotten
but-
sadly used to over the last year. Really, something falls down and you just got to pick it up and keep moving. So
All right. All in favor of approving Joyce White as interim treasurer, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations.
hey, Mama Warbucks. There you go. Bringing it in.
And they're all there,
She's spinning it all anyway.
they're all clapping because it's not them.
Yeah, they are. Amy
Yes,
Lauren's
it
really
had to be
clapping
me.
back there. I heard her.
All right. Superintendent comments.
Actually, I have an important one. Tomorrow night at 6 p.m., the state of West Virginia will be holding their Teacher of the Year, Service Person of the Year banquet down in Charleston. We have 2 individuals who were both finalists for the state. Miss Charity Marsteller at Jefferson High School and our own Miss Wendy Dodson at the school board office were both finalists for the Teacher of the Year, Service Person of the Year. We have put up on our website the Facebook link, and I'll be sending it to the board as well. If you'd like to watch it live stream and join in the excitement of having the rest of the state recognize what great staff we have here as well. So kudos to both of them, Ms. Marsteller and Ms. Dodson, for representing us so well.
All right. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Do we have anything else this evening?
No, ma'am, no executive session. No, ma'am.
All right. 7:09, meeting adjourned. Thank you.